The sun had just begun its ascent over the hills of Galilee, casting a golden glow over the rippling waters of the lake. Villagers bustled in the early hours, carrying baskets of fish and produce, their conversations mingling with the calls of seabirds. Among them walked Jesus, a figure who drew attention wherever he went. His demeanor was calm, his presence magnetic, and his eyes reflected both wisdom and compassion. On this particular day, Jesus found himself surrounded by a crowd that had grown larger by the hour. They had heard of his teachings, but more than that, they had heard of his power to perform miracles. Some came out of desperation, others out of curiosity, but all were drawn to the hope he seemed to embody. A man pushed his way through the throng, carrying a bundle wrapped tightly in his arms. His face was lined with worry and tears streaked his dusty cheeks. Within the bundle lay his daughter, her frail body barely moving, her breath shallow. The father knelt before Jesus, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Teacher, I have heard of your power. My daughter is near death. Please, I beg you, heal her." Jesus looked at the man with a gentle gaze and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Take me to her," he said simply. The journey to the man's home was marked by whispers among the crowd, their anticipation palpable. When they arrived, the child's mother stood by her bedside, clutching her hands in silent prayer. The room was filled with the faint scent of herbs, a futile attempt to ward off death. Jesus stepped forward and knelt beside the girl. He placed his hand on her forehead, his lips moving in a soft, inaudible prayer. The stillness of the room was broken as the girl's chest rose in a deep, sudden breath. Her eyes fluttered open and she looked around, confused but alive. Her parents wept with joy, their gratitude pouring out in words they could barely form. The crowd outside erupted into cheers, for they had witnessed a miracle. Jesus had raised the girl from the brink of death. News of the miracle spread quickly, and by the next day, even more people had gathered by the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Among them was a woman who had suffered for years from a bleeding condition. Doctors had failed her, and she had spent all she had seeking a cure. Now, she stood in the crowd, hope flickering in her heart. She dared not approach him directly, for she felt unworthy. Instead, as Jesus passed by, she reached out and touched the edge of his garment, believing that even this small act could heal her. Instantly, she felt a change within her body, a warmth and a relief she had not known in years. She stopped in her tracks, overcome with emotion. Jesus, too, stopped and turned to face the crowd. "Who touched me?" he asked, his voice calm yet commanding. The disciples looked at him in confusion. "Master, the crowd is pressing against you from all sides. How can you ask who touched you?" But Jesus' gaze swept the crowd until his eyes met the woman's. Trembling, she stepped forward and fell at his feet. "It was I," she confessed, tears streaming down her face. "I have been sick for so long, and I thought if I could just touch your robe." Jesus smiled at her, his voice filled with kindness. "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be free from your suffering." The woman rose, her heart lightened, her body healed, and the crowd marveled at yet another act of divine power. As the day stretched into evening, the crowd showed no signs of dispersing. They had followed Jesus into a remote hillside, eager to hear his words and witness his deeds. But now, hunger began to gnaw at them, and murmurs of discontent rippled through the masses. Jesus turned to his disciples. "These people are hungry. Let us give them something to eat." The disciples exchanged uncertain glances. "Master, we have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. How can this feed so many?" But Jesus took the loaves and fish into his hands and lifted them toward the heavens. He gave thanks and began to break them into pieces. As he distributed the food, a miraculous thing happened. The loaves and fish multiplied. The basket seemed endless, and everyone in the crowd, numbering 5,000 men, along with women and children, ate their fill. When all were satisfied, the disciples gathered 12 baskets of leftovers, a testament to the abundance of the miracle. Later that night, as darkness enveloped the land, the disciples set out in a boat to cross the Sea of Galilee. Jesus had stayed behind to pray, and the waters were calm as they began their journey. But as midnight approached, a fierce storm descended upon them. Waves crashed against the boat, and the wind howled, threatening to capsize them. Amid the chaos, one of the disciples cried out, pointing toward the horizon. "Look, it's a ghost." Through the mist and spray of the storm, a figure approached, walking on the surface of the water. As he drew closer, they realized it was Jesus. His presence, serene and unwavering, brought a sense of calm even as the storm raged around them. "Take heart, it is I," he called to them. Do not be afraid. Peter, filled with a mix of awe and doubt, called out, Lord, if it is truly you, command me to come to you on the water. Come, Jesus said, extending his hand. Peter stepped out of the boat and onto the waves. For a moment, he walked toward Jesus, his faith holding him steady. But as he glanced at the storm around him, fear crept in, and he began to sink. Lord, save me, he cried. Jesus reached out and caught him, pulling him back to safety. You of little faith, he said gently. Why did you doubt? Together, they climbed into the boat, and the wind ceased. The disciples were left in awe, bowing before him and saying, Truly, you are the Son of God. The final miracle in this story occurred as Jesus and his disciples traveled to the village of Bethany. Word had reached him that his friend Lazarus had died. By the time Jesus arrived, Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Martha, Lazarus' sister, met him on the road, her face etched with grief. Lord, she said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus comforted her, saying, Your brother will rise again. He asked to be taken to the tomb where a crowd had gathered, mourning Lazarus. Roll away the stone, Jesus commanded. The crowd hesitated, but they obeyed. Standing before the open tomb, Jesus lifted his eyes to heaven and prayed. Then with a loud voice he called, Lazarus, come forth! For a moment there was silence. Then, from the darkness of the tomb, a figure emerged, wrapped in burial cloths. Lazarus was alive, his face filled with confusion and wonder. The crowd gasped, some falling to their knees in astonishment. It was a miracle that defied all comprehension, a testament to the power and love of Jesus. These 5 miracles, healing the dying girl, curing the bleeding woman, feeding the 5,000, walking on water, and raising Lazarus, are but glimpses into the divine mission of Jesus. Through each act, he demonstrated compassion, challenged faith, and revealed the boundless grace of God. His miracles were not merely displays of power, but signs of a deeper truth, that love and faith could transcend even the greatest of trials.